The top 25 foods for diabetics. We're gonna move fast and go rapid fire here. Number 1, apples. In the fruit category, it may seem like apples are very high sugar, but they're so low glycemic index, they're really not a bad fruit, not to mention the antioxidant profile with things like quercetin in them actually helps combat some of the negative issues that you encounter with high glucose. So for diabetics, it's one of the better fruits that you can consume. The number 2 food, chia seeds. 1, they digest very slow and they create a gel within the stomach. Okay, when they create this gel, that slows down the carbohydrate absorption, lowering that glucose curve a little bit. Additionally, when they ferment, they create butyrate. Now, what does that mean? Butyrate is a byproduct of our gut bacteria breaking down fiber. But this butyrate sends a signal to help us metabolize glucose better. So in the short term it helps, and in the long term. The next one, number 3, is red meat, which a lot of people would combat. But the thing about red meat, it contains all the nutrition that you need. So the reason that I mentioned that is you're getting your vitamins from red meat. So you don't have to be looking elsewhere, going over to fortified sugary cereals and things like that. So although it sounds confusing, in an indirect way, red meat provides you with the nutrition you need, so you don't have to look elsewhere. But additionally, protein in general is one of the best things that you can consume when it comes down to modulating your glucose and combating insulin resistance. Number 4 is macadamia nuts. And at first you think, oh, these are super caloric, this can't be good. But first of all, as far as nuts are concerned, they're like the lowest carb nut that you're really gonna find. There's some obscure ones out there, but they also contain very specific fats. Okay, these are called monounsaturated fats, and in this case, omega-7s and omega-9s. And the research is very, very strong, suggesting that they help insulin sensitivity, which means they help the cell become more sensitive to receiving a signal from the pancreas, thereby making it so that you can control your glucose that much easier. I popped the link down below for a company called House of Macadamia if you want to try them out. They've got really awesome macadamia nuts that are grown right in South Africa, and then they are packaged and handled and everything literally less than an hour away from where they are harvested. So they support all the local farmers there, just a really good brand. But as far as flavor is concerned, their macadamia nuts are top notch. Plus they have macadamia nut bars where the first ingredient is literally macadamia nuts. You're not going to find bars like that anywhere else. So their first ingredient is literal macadamia nuts. And additionally, they have macadamia nut oils, and they've got some other really cool products coming out. So definitely recommend you check them out. They are a sponsor on this channel, but because of that, there's a 20% off discount link. So in the top line of the description, just beneath this video, there's a 20% off link. Plus, with any purchase using that link, a free 20-ounce bottle of cold-pressed macadamia nut oil. Literally the only cold-pressed macadamia nut oil that I know of that's on the market. And you're getting one completely free if you just use that link down below. There's no catches, it's just to get the word out there. Number 5, let's jump over to grains for a second. Quinoa. In the world of grains, I would say quinoa is probably the best. Why? Because it's the highest protein, and protein is going to be king, okay? But additionally, it has all the amino acids that you need, so it's essentially a complete protein. So in the world of getting grains in, if you absolutely must, quinoa is going to take the cake. Number 6 is broccoli. Okay, broccoli is more than just a fibrous vegetable. Sure, that's great, but it contains something called sulforaphane. Okay, and sulforaphane we've seen in lots of research to be very, very powerful when it comes down to insulin sensitivity. There's also something called glucosinolates that are in broccoli sprouts. Now these can help combat the negative effects of high glucose. So if you're further down the line of having diabetes, eating some broccoli sprouts now and then might be a really good thing. Jumping back to fruit, now let's look at raspberries. Okay, raspberries are probably my favorite fruit. Super low carbohydrate to begin with, very high fiber, but they contain tannins that slow down carb absorption, and they actually stop the enzyme that is involved with breaking down carbs. So if you stop the breakdown of carbs, they pass through your system without absorbing into the glucose or absorbing as glucose into the bloodstream as much. Number 8 is a beverage. Let's talk green tea for a second. Okay, sure, green tea is great because there's no calories in it, but it's the antioxidants in green tea, the EGCG, that are so powerful. Okay, helps out once again with that insulin sensitivity. So a very powerful thing that you can consume that not only gives you an energy boost and a mental boost, but helps your glucose regulation as well. Then number 9 is another drink, black coffee. Now, depending what you put in that coffee, that's a whole different story. But straight up coffee itself is actually quite good, and it catches a bad rap because caffeine can spike your glucose. But it spikes your glucose only because it lets the glucose that's stored in your muscles go into your bloodstream to be used as energy. So even if your glucose goes up, it's going to come back down and you're going to be right back at square one. You're not getting yourself in a worse situation generally. And we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. If you have caffeine and caffeine gives you energy, energy makes you move, movement sucks up glucose, it's probably a win. But studies have seen that when you take a look at decaf coffee, the effects on diabetes, the effects on insulin resistance are profound. So it's the polyphenols, the antioxidants that are in coffee that we're really interested in. The caffeine is just sort of a moot point. Number 10, avocados. And it all comes down to the monounsaturated fats once again. Very similar to the macadamia nuts, except a little bit more fiber with an avocado. Number 11, and I have some trepidation about saying this because I don't want to condone just going out and eating buckets of rice, but brown rice is not all that bad. And it's mainly because the husk has a high amount of magnesium, and magnesium directly contributes to the positive effects of our pancreatic beta cells. So basically allowing our pancreas to produce insulin properly, we need magnesium. Now, I think there's better, lower carb ways to get magnesium, but if you must have some rice, go for the brown rice. Number 12 is lentils. I'm a big lentil guy. I like Mediterranean style diets to begin with, and a lot of the research shows that lentils, A, are very low glycemic, but they're also somewhat of a resistant starch, which means they ferment a little bit in our gut, and they don't contribute to high levels of glucose nearly as much as other grains, legumes, things like that. Number 13 is a wild card, because it's oats, but I don't want you to eat those oats hot. I want you to be a weirdo and cool down your oats. If you cool down your oats, they turn into a resistant starch, which, just like lentils, it means that they break down slower and they actually ferment in the gut rather than just directly contributing to glucose. So if you can handle it and you want to have oatmeal in the morning, just try it cool. Or add some cool milk and let it cool down so it's at least warm and not hot. The temperature really does make a difference when it comes down to starches. Number 14 is salmon. And try to go for sockeye salmon. The darker the red, the better, because it has more astaxanthin. So salmon is great because of the omega-3s. Sure, that's going to help us out with membrane fluidity, that's going to help the insulin signaling, but the astaxanthin, which is what gives it that pink pigment, is a powerful antioxidant that's very, very good at controlling some of the negative effects from glucose. So load up on the salmon. Number 15 is probably the most secret, sneaky, awesome diabetic food, and that's okra. Okay, not only is okra going to be a high fiber content vegetable, but it also has a high amount of what are called polysaccharides, which means it's very fermentable, it slows down the digestion, and it breaks down slow in the gut and feeds the gut bacteria. There's something in it called rhamnogalactoneuron, which is a specific saccharide that breaks down and has anti-diabetic effects. So it has been demonstrated in multiple bodies of research that okra just has unique properties when it comes down to insulin resistance, overall insulin management within the body. But the other interesting side note about okra is it has an interesting ability to inhibit the enzymes involved in carb breakdown, similar to raspberries with amylase inhibition, except with okra, it's working upon multiple different angles. So we have sort of a 3 or 4-pronged approach in which okra can lower glucose and be a very powerful anti-diabetes food. Number 16 is kimchi. Any kind of fermented food is going to be good for the gut, it's going to break down slowly, and it's going to provide you with the nutrition that your gut needs to handle carbs better. Number 17 is kefir. Some people call it kefir. I've heard that it's properly pronounced kefir. Either way, if you look at the research with kefir, it's interesting. Non-probiotic versions of kefir don't have any effect on glucose, but probiotic enriched or regular probiotic fermented versions of kefir do have a positive effect, which tells us that it's not the food itself, it's the fermentation process. So the longer that it's been fermented, the more cultured, the more probiotic rich the kefir, the better it is for diabetes. Number 18 is eggs, and not just because there's a bunch of protein. I mean, obviously that's a huge thing, but eggs are very nutritious and they have the B vitamins that we need to help support carbohydrate breakdown. Okay, so they're going to provide us with what we need to metabolize carbs properly. Plus, if you're further along with diabetes and you're dealing with eye issues or diabetic neuropathy or retinopathy, well, then you need to be paying attention to those kinds of things. And eggs contain lutein and zeaxanthin, which are very, very good for the eyes. So if you're further along, you might want to add more eggs into your diet. Number 19, I have trepidation saying this one as well because I'm not a big kale fan, but I have to acknowledge research where research lies, okay? Kale is rich in what is called kaempferol, okay, which is a specific sort of antioxidant flavonoid that seems to have very interesting effects on insulin sensitivity, not to mention the caloric density, not to mention the fiber. water, it's probably something to add in every now and then, or maybe put them in the oven and make some kale chips. Number 20 is spinach, but not raw spinach. Cook it. Okay, spinach is very high in oxalates, and these are anti-nutrients that can inhibit the absorption of other minerals and nutrients. But if we cook spinach, it breaks those down. It makes it easier to digest. What's unique about spinach is it's very rich in nitrates. Okay, nitrates are going to help what's called vasodilation. This is where your blood vessels expand and you get more blood flow. More blood flow means more glucose getting delivered to the cells and to the tissue, so that it's not in your bloodstream. You want more blood flow. So spinach with your eggs in the morning might be perfect. Number 21, flax seeds. Not flax oil. Flax oil does not give us the benefit here. Flax seeds, we want the fiber benefit. Flax has unique types of fiber in it that specifically feed our microbiome very well. So it's one of those things where I really do try to have 1 to 2 tablespoons of flax per day, whether I'm putting it in a smoothie, putting it in oatmeal, putting it in Greek yogurt, anything like that. Number 22 is apple cider vinegar. Not really a food, but apple cider vinegar can be added anywhere. Added to your water, added to whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, the thing with apple cider vinegar is it is also an enzyme inhibitor. So it slows down carb breakdown, but it also activates what's called AMPK. Simple terms, what this does is it helps our body tap into our stored fuel a little bit easier. So apple cider vinegar, either before or after a meal, works very, very well. Number 23 is turmeric. Turmeric has anti-inflammatory effects. If we have an anti-inflammatory effect, this reduces the inflammation, or the sort of static, I like to call it, in the bloodstream, making it so that the signal from the pancreas, from insulin, can reach the cell better because there's less noise and static in the way. Number 24 is cumin. Now cumin is interesting because there's newer research, and we don't really know the mechanism, but cumin seems to combat advanced glycation in products. AGEs are when our glucose is so high for a long period of time, it starts to sort of cook proteins. It reacts with proteins and kind of caramelizes them and creates these compounds known as advanced glycation in products. These are toxic compounds that we need to get rid of. Turns out that cumin helps fight these AGEs. So for whatever reason, it might be a good thing to add in. And finally, number 25, high in protein, high in probiotics, and delicious, is going to be unsweetened Greek yogurt. You can add some sweetener, add a little bit of monk fruit, add a little bit of stevia, add a little bit of vanilla extract, and it makes for a great dessert if you have diabetes or high insulin resistance. You're getting your protein in, you're getting your probiotics, you're low calorie and low carb. I'll see you tomorrow.